Hey there, I'm Michael Damon, and I'm introducing the world to starbeam.one. In this session, we talk about my most favorite topic in the entire world, me. Let's begin. I was hoping that I wouldn't have to do this, but I think as a centralized or traditional business, it's better to know, if people know who you are, sort of thing. And so I begrudgingly did it. And, thinking about it, it's actually kind of therapeutic, being locked up for 2 years in a pandemic, especially. It's just sort of a way of getting out there, right? It's just something new, it's something different, and it's actually a nice project. I would encourage you, if you haven't, to maybe try it out. So, some things to know about me: I'm a bicentennial baby, which is a fancy way of saying that I was born in 1976. 45 years old. I think I mentioned that in a previous slide. That I'm proud of that year because of the bicentennial association. And the other thing I'd like you to know about me is that I'm self-taught, critical thinker. Everything that I do is, it's just research on my own. I did go to college, but it was more of a babysitting experience for me, and I did drop out to help start a startup, as we'll see here in the next session. And so from there, I'm a preacher's kid. That's something I was raised in the church, and I'm kind of. Do I mention that or not? But it's sort of a thing that as an artist, I gained an appreciation for it. I have an appreciation for it as I have aged because the Bible is a teaching tool, and it is all about narrative art when you think about it. And being a good narrative artist to me is someone who explores morality, the difference between right and wrong, and that's really kind of what we do as artists, I think, at the end of the day. So, kind of to highlight that, I've had early training in this regard. Getting into some of my interest here, they're all in starbeam.one, right? This is kind of like a really promising adventure for me. So, business, really like reading news, just seeing what works, what doesn't, what people like and don't like, and technology.net, my bread and butter sort of thing. Then art, I had that in high school, as we'll see, and I kind of deviated from that. I'm wanting to get back into that. It's kind of actually what started this up again. But I've also gotten into writing here this past, over this past decade, and I'm kind of wanting to combine those two into drawing and writing and publishing them on starbeam.one. Wading into some sensitive topics here, as I go through life, I'm finding that the only opinion I should have is the one that I keep to myself. Sort of a kind of my operating stance these days, but kind of just talking about being a critical thinker, just question everything, right? There's just and also just challenging authority, but doing it in a way now that does it properly. And I think that's sort of a learning lesson for me is, you can be right about something but wrong in how you demonstrate that. And so now it's just more of kind of being better at presenting an argument, or discussing things with people and whatnot. So a big lesson for me. And but always challenge authority. Always don't just accept things based on what someone says. You have to make sure that you are thinking for yourself. And in that vein, I am an independent. I would classify myself as an independent, although I do have this posture of center right. So that might mean that I will typically vote for the right, but if I feel that they don't have character, or that they are a character, that's what that QR code leads to, kind of a nod to Pulp Fiction. I might go the other way, or I might find another alternative sort of thing. So that's kind of how I approach things in that regard. And then kind of, religiously or whatnot, I was raised Protestant, and that's still there, but, recently I've been kind of drawn to the Old Testament, and again, kind of having that nod to Pulp Fiction, but the Old Testament just has really great writing from such long ago, and getting back to those stories and those narratives, it's just been very appealing to me, and something I've been finding myself in lately. Real quickly, some of my literary heroes: Jim Morrison. There's this backhanded compliment that he gets that he's like this gateway poet, and I never left that gateway. He's just someone that I feel I share an affinity with. Our styles are very similar. In fact, my style was in a certain way before I met him, and it was just like, whoa, we kind of share the same style. So there's just that affinity. Carl Gustav Jung, he is a fellow preacher's kid, just an excellent creative mind, creative writer, all around. Make sure you have a copy of the Red Book. That's like QR code in his corner. And then finally, Marcus Aurelius, he is just an emperor who really writes well, just someone who just has inspired me. He woke up my inner noble, I would say, about 5 years ago. When I read Meditations, and that's that QR code there that you can go for more information, and just the thing about this emperor that writes so well, it's sort of like that pen is mightier than the sword sort of thing, and you can see why people followed him. You can see why soldiers enlisted in his army. And so those are kind of like my big three. And I have these other heroes as well, or just other literary artists that I have as inspiration for one reason or another. Joseph Campbell, he is someone is kind of in the same vein as Jim Morrison and Carl Jung. He is just a creative mind, a creative writer, really gets into myths, right? So it's all about storytelling and kind of like the background of that. And he's the one that kind of locked himself in a cabin for an indeterminate amount of time and just read. And there's something to appreciate about that. And so he's someone to know about. And then there's William Blake, who I learned through Jim Morrison. And, he's just a poet all around. And maybe I probably should have learned about him sooner. But I guess maybe he is a gateway poet, right? So, he has this notion of illustrated text, illustrated poetry. So all of his poetry has illustrations with it, and I really like that. That's actually something so I'm wanting to combine with Starbeam.one, is to combine my drawing with my writings and sell it as a product. So that's sort of, an inspiration there, or a point of interest there. And then finally, there's this kind of a controversial character, Adi Da, Franklin Albert Jones. He is a spiritual writer, just someone I really respect his writing. And, he has this book, The Knee of Listening, that is just, I think it's like 800 pages, and I read every page. And just someone who, I'm not that big of a reader, or as I should be. And, maybe 200 pages is kind of my limit, but 800 pages is not heard of for me. There's no way I'm going to read that, but I did for him. And so if someone, if you know how it is, if someone has an 800 page book and you read all of that, that means they're a pretty good writer in your world. Okay, typical day, it's one of those things where it's like, do I share this? Is it too much information? And the way I look at it is, if I'm going to be investing in someone and I am looking for investment, it's one of those things where I'd like to kind of know how they're spending their time. And so I'm treating you how I would like to be treated. And, it's just to start out here, I'm a big believer now of 7 to 8 hours of sleep every day, every night. And, I no longer do the 24, 48, 96 hours without sleep. That is no longer a thing for me. And, it's just sort of foundation of how I operate. And I'm a big believer in working out, just taking care of myself, about 5.5 miles of running and walking every day. The QR code there is actually to my first and probably only 5K I'll ever do, because I almost died. I felt like it, at least. I scored in the top 25% of my age group, and I feel that's okay. I don't want to, I'm just going to leave while I'm on top, sort of thing. So from there, I have this pandemic burger that I've developed during the pandemic, and it's sort of like the 16-hour eating, fasting thing that I have going on. And the pandemic burger is a fancy sandwich that I have. I have a recipe around that. Maybe I might share that sometime. And from there, I just work. And so working to me is just being around the work. And I have a lot of hours, but mostly it's just being around the work and having that develop as such. It's not something that I would impose on anyone either. I spend every day like this. So this is an everyday thing. And I note that there with 70 to 80 hours per week, but this is not something that I expect others to do. I'm not looking to build a culture of insane work hours. This is just how I'm wired. I've always been this way, and I definitely appreciate the 8-hour day if that works for you. So that's kind of how I operate. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more perspective on how my world works in that regard. Okay, so that wraps me up. Hopefully you have a little better idea of who I am. And now we can move on to my work history, which I call What Did You Do? Sort of a tip of the hat there to Ghostbusters. What did you do, Ray? What did you do, Mikey? All right, see you there.